best or most famous Fabian Society speaker, Bob Hawke. And what did he give you? He gave you the Australia Act. Now, in the Australia Act of 1986, would it require a Commonwealth referendum, if you've ever read the Act?
Should have been.
Did you have one?
No.
Well, they're bypassing your constitution, they're bypassing your juries, they're bypassing grand juries, and they're stamping all over you. When are you going to stand up, Aussie? It says there, this is his portion of his speech, and there's a website thing there at the bottom. It says this, which is a hallmark Fabian socialist trademark statement. For the right moment you must wait, as Fabius did, most patiently, when warring against Hannibal, though many censured his delays. But when the time comes, you must strike hard, as Fabius did, or your waiting will be in vain and fruitless. Now, what's he saying to strike hard at? What's the next one? Julia Gillard, your current Deputy Prime Minister, also charged for a grand jury matter pending in the Supreme Court in Victoria. Not yet heard, but she's now dictating your policies for Australia. It says speech to the inaugural Fabian Society inaugural dinner, 31st of August 2000 in Melbourne. There you can download that website. Julia Gillard is also in the program. Julia Gillard has full knowledge the Crown's been removed. Julia Gillard shouldn't be sitting in any parliament in this country. Victoria, there's a development land tax of $95,000 per hectare is going to be introduced by Victorian Parliament for inter-growth authority land. Is that a fair tax?
No way.
Is that a reasonable sized tax? Well, one of the Masonic agendas is, they say that landed gentry is a problem to us, so at all costs we must take the land from them. That's the Masonic program, interlinked with the Fabian boys. Now, legislation is pending that will affect Christian schools' understate funding. That's being placed before the Victorian Parliament now. In essence, it will remove the right to preach Christ. Now, we don't have to tell you, that's socialism, that's communism. Now, this is a picture we took at Werribee. Now, it's Werribee that's important to us, because where is the electorate of your Deputy Prime Minister? Werribee. What is Werribee doing about these criminal issues? Nothing. The pastors are all just doing status quo. Everyone is doing status quo as though nothing has happened. How long is you going to let that happen? Now, what we've done here, that is the Assemblies of God Church in Werribee, which is right alongside the Muslim temple. But there's a point of why we took the picture, because that's what's on the front of the Muslim temple. So in relation to Christianity, they're coming into the virgin birth. It says there at the bottom, the angel said, "O Mary, Allah has chosen thee." And it's right alongside the Christian church that has not taken them to court for that. Western Australia. Local government is to be reduced. That is saying you have a problem here now. We went to the meeting last night where your councils must amalgamate. Now, what they're actually saying is, we'll give you a choice to amalgamate. We're not going to force you to do it. But if you don't, you'll wither on the vine. That means you'll get no funding. I wonder who's telling them to do that, because we were there, we did stand up, and there was probably 20 odd people there, essentially all of your main people who run councils in probably 3 different councils here. But the question I asked them was, if you're submitting to the minister who's told you to do this, How could you submit to a minister who would have full knowledge that the Crown is removed from Western Australia? So best you'd be looking at that problem rather than this problem, because at this point you don't seem to have authority to do diddly squat. Now, is that a reasonable question?
Yes.
And it's been lodged at that, so they've all got full knowledge of that. What they need now is the evidence of that. So walk it on in. I see it's only over the road. The Kalgoorlie Boulder office. Now here, it's actually saying the second part, the Crown was removed from specific acts in the period 2003-2004 without the electors' knowledge nor the required referendum. Now that's that document or act that I held up before. This should be personally handed to every preacher in this town. It should be personally handed to every person in authority in this town. Now, Darren and I were actually pulled over driving up here in the car, and when the man handed us the ticket type thing, we started chatting. He said, "Where are you guys going to?" "Kalgoorlie." "What for?" "To do a lecture on the United Nations taking this country and the Crown removed." To which the sergeant said, "What do you mean the Crown removed?" Now, let me reiterate what I just said. If the Crown is removed, what's the essence of the ticket?
Null and void.
Well, it's only able to be enforced if you submit to the substituted jurisdiction. But the police officer was interested. They're not interested in Kalgoorlie, but this was down the road. And he said, "What do you mean the Crown? You mean the Crown?" I said, "Yeah, well, as a police officer of West Australia, who did you take your allegiance to?" He said, "The Crown." I said, "But the Crown's gone." He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Well, it actually means you're out of authority." And he said, "Hang on. Is this in the media?" Well, folks, if you're waiting for the media to give you information, you're going to already be behind the 8 ball. You're going to be behind the 8 ball. Who should be giving it to you? The preachers all say they're honest and they're giving you the truth of God. It should be them. Is that a reasonable comment?
Yes.
How can they bring God's law and help the country when they're not watching the other law? Now, you all know the history of communism and what happened to the preachers and everything else. This is going to be the most horrific attack ever launched on Christianity in the world. And where is the Aussie Christian today? Still wondering which church they should go to, or whether they should whatever. Stop doing all that. And make up your mind whether you're on God's side or not.
Amen.
United Nations, an international organisation formed in 1945 to establish a global community with goals of preventing war. All that's rubbish. They love war because that's the motto of the Masonic Lodge. Revolution is their caper because revolution brings chaos and then they bring order. But it's their order. Providing justice, well, you're not going to see any of that in this country. Promoting human rights, but no spiritual rights because they're gone, because they're going to keep them for themselves. And welfare. Well, hello. We can all see the kids where they're heading for that one already. And they've lost the ability to want to work because the government will look after us. Only till they've got them lock, stock and barrel. And who's given it to them? The Aussie parent. UN meditation room. Now, dwell on that a minute, because when they say they give you human rights, what are they doing inside their room? They're doing what you call the cult of the all-seeing eye. Now, you don't have to know Freemasonry too well much to know that that's exactly what they're doing in there. And in Freemasonry, degrees of Freemasonry are always to raise someone into more capability in the spirit. Why? Because they need spiritual warriors. Why? Because they know one day the Christians might get into unity and be a spiritual opponent. Because that was your mandate from God. All power and authority I give unto you. Most of them can't even turn on the ignition switch.